If you need your pitch changed, well, NordVPN can doctor any surface to a new location so that your IP address is set for you to win. Want to watch a game on a free stream in another hemisphere? Give NordVPN the ball. Or if you just want to watch a clip on social media that a cricket board won't allow, promote NordVPN to pinch hit. So if you need a VPN, go Nord. Use nordvpn.com/Kimber to get a 2-year contract with a discount, plus 4 extra months and gifts in some markets. It's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the show notes. Protect your computer like a bowler protects the boundaries in the death overs with nordvpn.com/Kimber today. Morning, everyone. Well, that was more fun than we thought it was going to be. I'm Jared Kimber, and this is the Scoreboard. But let us just take us through this fascinatingly weird micro day. Anderson starts with a maiden who was just trolling Stokes for not using him the night before. But really, the day started with India looking incredible comfortable. For like 8 overs, the pitch was fine. And the calls for Anderson to use the new ball didn't mean much when Rohit Sharma dog-kicked him out into the stands. But the wicket did seem to change a little bit, right? And when Jaiswal was out, Rohit followed too soon, and Patidhar's sad run continued. And suddenly the wicket looked spiteful, and the ball was still hard. India were in danger of giving the game back, and that would have been for the second time, right? Jadeja was digging in like an Alabama tick, waiting for the new ball, and England were asking where the runs were going to come from because it was getting tougher to score out there. And then after lunch, a full toss was flicked straight to short mid-wicket. And then, to follow that up, there was another dismissal the very next ball. It's like all the way through this series, this is what we'd been building up for, this great moment to finally get us a really classically close test match. And then it didn't quite get there in the end, did it? It kind of fizzled out a little bit, but we still got its moments. Every test match has given us something along the lines, whether it be personal injuries, pregnancies, DRS, close matches, wild swings, mums, Basball chat, kids stepping up. It's just been full of madness and entertainment all the way through. And we thought maybe for a little while it could do it one more time. But at the very least, what we got was something special, because we got tenseness. And I think if you go through the history of Test cricket and look at all the Test series that are 5 Test matches long, there's only like 10 that have ever gone 3-2. And a lot of those weren't at tense. At the end of the 4th Test, to have a moment where both teams could win, where there was something going on, incredible. This series has had more twists than your favorite telenovela. But ultimately, it ends with a 3-1 scoreline. Numbers cannot always show romance. This is a Scoreboard. Let us analyze. If you've got questions, same as always, pop them in the chat. If you are desperate to ask something, the best way of always doing it is in the super chat. But whenever you can do it, it might be a slightly shorter show today because you can see I'm in this, I want to call it a recording booth. It's just a booth inside of Uncle Rupert's building. But I might get whisked away to do radio. So we'll certainly get all the Scoreboard part of the show, and we'll be able to do any super chats. But beyond that, it might be a little bit tougher. But we'll give it our best. But let's start with the analysis. He says, forgetting to press the button on his screen. I thought this was really, really interesting. So England's runs per over during Basball. We've had a couple of the games. This was against Pakistan. I'm trying to remember if this was one of the ones. This is 2000 and was this against India, I think. Anyway, point being, twice in a game they've been over a run a ball, which is incredible for Test cricket. Then you've got all these in here, which are over 5 runs and over. Then you have all these up until where here, they're over 4 runs and over. The only game before today where England had not scored at more than 3.5 runs and over was the first game of Basball, when they were still, they weren't sure how much they were going to commit to the bit at that stage. But since then, you could certainly see that pretty much everything else has just been them going crazy coconut bananas. This is this game, 3.13. And I think with England losing, there'll probably already be comments lined up here of people saying, Basball doesn't work and everything else. They didn't play this as Basball. And I thought, in some ways, I respect them a lot, because this is what we've been asking for, for a while now, is that ability to kind of go through both different methods. Use Basball when Basball works. Use traditional cricket when traditional cricket works. Being completely dogmatic with one style doesn't really work because Test cricket does not require that. And Brendan McCullum has talked about that a lot, but the team hasn't always followed it. And if you look at Brendan McCullum's batting, he was like that as a player. So I thought that was really, really interesting. And, the fact that I think the pitch played a part, but also, the Root and Folkes partnership and the collapse in the third innings. In fact, I wasn't going to say this, but me and Cheyenne have been talking about this a little bit. The question really was whether England was done in a third innings pickle. And for those who don't know, the third innings pickle is when you're ahead or you're about even at the halfway point of the game. You have to go out and bat in the third innings, and you don't know whether to attack, to just accumulate, what sort of speed you should be scoring at or anything else. And you get yourself into a bit of a position where you get confused and then you end up not making enough runs. And you see it so much in first-class cricket. It came from Johnny Barron, the Surrey commentator. That's not really what happens here, which is a shame because I was hoping this would be, because England was so good with the third innings pickle, I thought this could be a reverse pickle. It wasn't a reverse pickle because England just got annihilated. But the thing I would like to mention is we put a lot of words and emotions into England in the fourth innings and how good they've been, especially in the first part of Basball in the fourth inning. I think the key to Basball is the third innings and the way they think about the third innings when they're bowling and when they're batting. If you look at the last two games, they've been completely outplayed in the third innings. Outbowled and outbatted now. So, again, worth having a look at there. This is the runs per over differential. Oh, I've written that twice. Sorry, in a bit of a rush trying to get this show out for you. But this was actually early on. This was before the slowdown from India. So I want to say they lost about 3 wickets when I looked this up. Actually, it might even been less of that because there was a point at which we thought this might be the only strong narrative out of the day because it looked like India was going to go nuts. But I think India just ended up slightly above. But you can see here that in the last 2 test matches, it was almost par on runs per over. And this time, again, even closer to par. That's a huge change from, look at all these different games that we've seen. There's only been one other test match that was even close to that. Two. The first one, and then this one in here in August. Everything else, England has been, look, 3.5 runs better than the opposition. 2.7 runs better than the opposition in runs per over. Really noticeable again that England didn't really play a Basball-y style. All right. Oh, I should have put this at the end. I'm going to come back to this, everyone. That's fine. I'll remember this. Because I just wanted to talk about Shubman Gill. This is Shubman Gill's record in the first innings of first-class matches, and this is his record in the second innings. I can't think of too many other players I've ever seen with this kind of record. It's not a natural thing. Sometimes you see players who are slightly higher in the second innings. This is massive. And it also doesn't make any sense when you think about Shubman Gill. He is a player who loves flat pitches in white ball cricket. And so suddenly in red ball cricket, he prefers it when there's something going on and when it's getting trickier, or maybe it's the pace coming out. I couldn't even tell you because I was thinking about this technically over and over again from the moment I thought about this, and I couldn't think of a technical reason that he's better. But he came out to bat today, and if you were listening in on TalkSport, you would have heard me say, like, really early on, he looks the most assured on this wicket. And he got to about 8 of 23, 28 balls, I want to say. And I was still thinking, if he goes out for 8 now, no one is going to remember how good he looked. But he did look really comfortable, and he did look like he belonged. And even Rohit and Jaiswal, when they were batting well, they didn't look as permanent as Shubman Gill did. But he went on and on. And I just want to show, this is first innings versus second innings in first-class cricket. Let's have a look at all 4 innings. In the first innings, he averages 37. It's incredibly low. Maybe that's when the wicket is at its freshest, and that sort of causes him some technical problems. And maybe in white ball cricket, we don't see that as much. But averages 51, 61, and 48 in the fourth innings, which is a huge, huge average to have. I would also suggest, based on, kind of what we've seen here, well, actually, I would suggest that went up today because he had a not out. We talked about in a previous video how he was very good in the third innings, but a lot of them came in low-pressure situations when India was massively in front. But you look at this, and it does feel like the bigger issue is not that he's been making runs when it's easy in the third innings. The bigger issue might be what's going on when the wicket is a little bit fresher. I don't have a great technical answer for why this is the case. But this is massive and weird. And I just want to take this a bit further. CricViz did this. In fact, it was CricViz. It was Soham from CricViz who alerted me to all this. Brilliant analyst. This is all the Indian players coming into this last innings. So this is before the last innings. So you can see Jaiswal averaging 74 in the first and second innings, and then in the fourth innings averaging 40. All these guys. That's Patidar. That's Sarfaraz. You got Rohit here. Right, Jadeja. It's really only Ashwin who kind of his average holds up. So you can see how noticeable it was. And it was one thing I thought England should... It's the sort of thing you hope England analysts would have shared. It doesn't really... It's not like it helps you bowl the opposition out or anything. But I think it would have made me, as a cricketer, feel, oh, okay. Not only are they a little bit less experienced, not only do they not have KL Rahul and Virat Kohli here, or Rishabh Pant, but also... they don't like batting in the fourth innings. But I want to show you, this is Rohit Sharma. So after CricViz sent me that other information, I looked this up. This is Rohit Sharma. Today he made a 50. This was the second 50 he has ever made in the fourth innings of a match in first-class cricket. What on earth? I'm still staggered by this. So 63 times... He's passed 50 in the first part of the game and the last part of the game twice. Now, you bat less in the fourth innings. You don't bat this much. I was shocked when he didn't have 100 in the fourth innings of first-class cricket. And then I looked it up and he'd only passed 50 once. And now he's got a new high score. It's just absolutely remarkable. So all credit goes to Shubman Gill and Dhruv Jurel, who's, if you look at these numbers, Dhruv Jurel wasn't exactly doing great in fourth innings before today. So well done to him. He came in, though, when the ball was a little bit softer. But he also came in on a hat-trick under lots of pressure. So I thought that was good. But Shubman Gill, and again, one thing I want to say is this is why I don't just look at someone's test batting average when, they've played, what has he played, 25 games? You're looking at a lot more information. You want to know more about the player and everything else. But the other thing is that we knew that Shubman Gill was a hugely talented player, right? That even though he'd failed in test cricket, there wasn't anyone who was saying it was for a lack of talent. Maybe you didn't handle it. Maybe there was a technical problem, whatever that may be. But really, really good players are handy in those kinds of situations. And he was perfect for India today. And, had India dropped him early in the series, I don't think that would have been a terrible decision either. Or whether I probably wouldn't have dropped him, I might have just said to him, look, take some time off, work out what you think the issues here and work your way back in. But luckily for India, they did not do that. And I just want to talk about just how difficult these sorts of chases are. So this is based IITN. I think we might have had one of his tweets before. I was going to say, I don't know if it's a man or a woman. I just said, and I just saw it says Mr. there. But last time India successfully chased 150 plus in the fourth innings, excluding the Gabba, was in 2013. Since that game, it's 10 losses, 5 draws, and 1 win. And you can see them here. So India got an incredible double start because England bowled horrendously bad last night. And then today, the wicket had actually eased off a little bit and they had a bit of a cushion so they could, attack a little bit more. But the point being is, if England had been on point last night and today, this might have been it might have even been an England victory, but at the very least, it would have been an even tougher game. So it does show you how hard it is to chase in Indian conditions. You've got the younger players as well. You've just got moments, don't you, like the Sarfaraz one where someone comes out and goes out first ball, and any other stage in the innings, you get a first ball duck, and it causes a little bit of chaos. In the fourth innings, it causes mega chaos. In the fourth innings of a test in Asia, when you have cracks running down the pitch, and when you have, inconsistent bounce at times, and even the normal part of the pitch is starting to, naturally deteriorate. Great effort from them to get over the line there. I just want to go back to this third umpire thing, which I've lost here. Okay, so This was Jaiswal coming down the wicket to Tom Hartley. We never actually saw the full DRS, but I'm assuming it wouldn't have been out LBW. Anyway, but the reason that Joel Wilson gave it not out was because he said there was bat involved. Now, you could see here, this is when the sound wave comes up. This is not scientific. But you can see this is when the sound wave comes up, and you can see how it's a low sound wave. And you can see that the bat is just flicking the pad on the way through here, and there is a clear gap between the ball and the bat, right? He never seemed to even notice that the ball had hit the pad. That the bat had hit the pad. And he decided that the sound wave was from an edge. They were rock and rolling it very quickly, as you might have seen on the coverage. That usually is they're looking for a deviation. That's the best way of looking for a deviation. When you have a straight bat like this, the best angle to see a deviation is actually the one that they use from, I think it's from long off generally, and it's like a low camera on the ground with a big long lens, and it shows you deviations really, really well. I think they have one from long on as well. This straight on camera sometimes, unless the distance between the bat and the pad is a long way, it sometimes creates an optical illusion where you can't really tell. It is possible that he hit this. I don't think he did, but it is very possible he hit this. So this is the second time in this game that I think Joel Wilson has made a decision based on seeing a waveform and automatically thinking that it was the bat on the ball, and not actually looking at the fact that it was most probably the bat on the pad. The other one was Joe Root. So a lot of people, when I tweeted this, were like, oh, whinging Englishman. I'm not English to begin with. But also, it had happened to both teams. So it's not about the individual teams. It's about the decision making. But my bigger point here is that a third umpire who's really, really good at the job of third umpire would have picked this up. I shouldn't say pick this up. Would have looked for other angles, because there's nothing clear here that tells us that this is ball on bat, right? At the very least, there is a question mark here. And I'm okay with, Joel Wilson missing this because it's not massive, right? It's not one of those ones where you hit the pad and the pad shuffles around or anything like that. But he missed the same thing twice in the one game. I think we should have specialist third umpires. And here's why. In his professional career, Joel Wilson has, I think it's 511 umpiring performances. This might have been the 512th, I think. But of those, 22% of the time he has been a third umpire, and the rest of the time he's been a standing umpire. All of these would have been on the back of him doing club cricket, of him doing league cricket, of him doing whatever other levels of cricket that he has umpired, which meant that by the time he got to the international panel, he was a really, really skillful umpire. Now, you might say he's not an elite umpire, and that's, lots of people don't like Joel Wilson's umpiring. For me, it's not about that, because we know he did the time and he was good enough to get to the elite panel. Whether he should be selected or not, you put that with the Shubman Gill kind of discussions, right? But he was selected for all these games because of what he did in club cricket, and then he was selected for international cricket based on all of this, a big chunk of this as well. Then when he gets to international cricket, 1 out of every 3 games, he has to do a form of umpiring that he is not an expert on. Right? He's now done it 100 times. So to be fair, in Joel Wilson's case, he's done quite a lot of it. But at best, he does it 1 in every 3 games. Right? And overall in his professional career, he's done it about just under a quarter, but more towards, 1 in 5. Right? How would we expect him to be as good at third umpiring as he is at general umpiring? Looking at this pie chart, how would we ever expect that? Third umpire requires a real understanding of technology. Third umpire, you need like a partnership with the people that you are working with, and they quite often change all the time. Third umpire understands how a game is broadcast, right? And also, you see some umpires pick up things of, actually, I want a camera angle from here. You need the ability to be able to talk to TV directors and technicians and all those sorts of things in quick, succinct ways to get the exact information that you want. You need to know which questions that you need to ask. All these sorts of things. How would that be a case if this is what he's done in his professional career so far? It's just harder for him. We shouldn't expect him to be as good at third umpiring as we do at major umpiring. So why do we not just have specialist third umpires? I don't understand it. And this has been going on for quite a long time now, where we look at this and we say to ourselves, if it is a tougher job and if it is a different job, we know there's overlap. I mean, I don't want to be a third umpire. You'd rather have professional umpires who are at least elite quality. But why not train and specialize them, make sure that they are the best that they can be at third umpiring, and then the other umpires are the best they can be at standing in the middle? Why this constant rotation? Too many errors happening in the third umpiring thing that I just believe a specialist third umpire would know about and would not be a big issue on. Anyway, there we go. It's a weird one to finish this test match on, but, we didn't actually have that much cricket today. And it's also harder to analyse on, the kind of the final day, because you're looking at the narrative and everything else. But that's the end of the scoreboard part of the show. We'll get your questions from the audience. So if you have some questions, I can see there's already a bunch of super chats that have come in. Sorry for the weird angle. I just realised I've got this light in front of me, and I don't know what this green thing is behind me over here. But bear with me. I'll definitely, as I said, get to all your super chats. And even if I don't get them today, we will tack them onto another podcast. But any other questions as well, chuck them in the room. You're watching Jared Kimber. This is the scoreboard. In fact, I'm letting you take an ad. Let's not muck around with an ad. Let's go straight into the super chats. Let's churn through. Well, not churn. That makes it sound worse than I meant it to be. RG says, your opinion on Vaughan's comments on route dismissal. Oh, I don't know. I don't look up what Michael Vaughan says. Sorry. Yeah. It's, there are some times when a former player will say something that will permeate, pop my bubble. I'm not friends with Michael Vaughan. I don't mean that in a bad way, like we hate each other. I just mean we don't know each other personally very well. Obviously, we've worked in the same industry for a long time, and we nod when we walk down the hallway, the way all professionals should in a work environment. But I don't know him very well. But my assumption from where I'm sitting is he's decided to be that sort of alt-righty, shock jockey persona. And I remember hearing him on the radio years ago. Actually, in fact, I used to be on his radio show, the old BBC one, before it became the podcast. And it was quite clear that he wanted to be the punchy sort of person who had the opinions, and it's worked quite well for him professionally. But, I don't think he believes in all the things he says. And I think if you were having a beer with him in a bar, he wouldn't always be able to back them up. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend that Michael Vaughan has said something that, I should say, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that when Michael Vaughan says something, A, I would search it out, and B, more often than not, I would think it would be something that wouldn't interest me, or I wouldn't believe that he would fully believe in it. But he said it because it sounds good, and which is fine. That's part of the media, right? There was an incredible thing in the First Take, the ESPN show recently, where JJ Redick sort of said the quiet bit out loud, where he said this topic is stupid, we shouldn't be talking about it. And Shannon Sharp said, the former NFL player, was like, yeah, but that's what we do on TV, right? That is sometimes what you have to do, and you manufacture things, and sometimes you say, really passionate stuff. It's not how I work, only because the bits I don't care about, and the bits I care about, like the third umpire thing, I really care about. So I don't know what he said. Anyway. Oh my God, he's got double here, RG. Is this it for Patadar? Yeah. Oh, we were going to do something on Patadar, but probably with all the chaos, we never quite got to it. But what? 2 half trackers, glove the ball into the ground, roll back onto his stumps. Am I missing a third dodgy one? Not dodgy, but, unlikely one. I still think he has test quality. I like his technique. I know he doesn't move his feet enough for some people, but I kind of like that. I like the stillness that he brings with his batting. I think he would make runs in international cricket if he was given a long go. I like that he's a little bit older and more mature than some of these other younger players coming through. Just gives them something different. But I don't see how you pick him over KL Rahul, and once Virat Kohli and KL Rahul come back in, Dhruv Jurel probably might be in ahead as a specialist batter than him as well now. So I would say it's probably the end. I personally wouldn't give up on him. I would write this off if I was a selector. I'd be like, no, we thought he was good enough before. We still think he's good enough. Let's give him another go somewhere else. And if it doesn't work, we've got other options. How are England spinners taking almost a similar amount of wickets to Indian spinners without having as much control? There's luck. There is different kind of fielding, different kind of play. I think all those things play a part. Ashwin hasn't been at his best. Akshar probably wasn't at his best. Jadeja was injured at times too. So all those things probably play a part. But I think England's plan with these two bowlers hasn't quite worked the way they thought it would. I think they thought these wickets would be shootout wickets, and therefore all you needed was Hartley and Bashir's best ball. It's actually been a little bit different to that. But the point is that if you watch Tom Hartley, look at the ball he got Dhruv Jurel out on. That is as good a ball as Jadeja or Akshar Patel would bowl, right? Have a look at some of the balls that Rayan Ahmed bowled at times. Really good quality balls. And Shoaib Bashir, he's bowled some, tall, sort of ripping off spin. Their best balls are wicket-taking balls. That's the Moeen Ali thing. The problem with the spinner like Moeen Ali or Tom Hartley or Shoaib Bashir, it's the ability to keep pressure on when the wicket is flat, or sometimes when they should be on top, they're not on top because, they bowl a couple of balls that don't really go all that well, and they allow their team to get away from them. But I think their best balls are wicket-taking balls, and that's why they were picked. But I think beneath that, they do struggle a little bit more. Ithi says, I-H-T-Y? I don't. But thank you for the super chat. Hopefully I got that. I-H-T-Y. I said that bit. That's right. Your opinion on Stokes' captaincy with him spreading the field with India clearly under pressure at 5 wickets down? I feel that is where England lost the game. I think that field spread the whole time. If Jadeja went out, and when Jadeja went out, they had the field spread. They were trying to stop the boundaries while still keeping pressure in other ways, whether it be wicket-taking pressure and occasionally pressure within the ring. It's interesting that when it got to 5 wickets down, that's an issue for you. But earlier on, when it was working, you didn't notice it as much. And that's fair. That's how humans are programmed. That's how we're all programmed. But the truth is that he was doing it quite a bit. He did some extraordinary fields. Like Jadeja had 3 men on the leg side boundary when he was facing Hartley, but they were all in 25 metres, where he was basically saying, you can have a single, you can have a 6, but you can't have a 4. I thought that was so interesting, just like getting in Jadeja's mind a little bit. And then he got Jadeja out with a full toss, so it didn't matter. I thought they probably kept the field back a little bit too much, but I think what their thought process was for a good while was because that ball went soft. I think they thought even getting singles was a struggle, and it was. It probably got to about 35, 40 runs, and they took a little bit too long. But up until that point, I actually thought what they did was more or less fine. He tried different. He had 3 fielders on the offside and 6 on the leg side, and he would try a fielder. At one stage, I think he wanted to have a short leg, but he realised that it was just before lunch, and he didn't want to stop for the helmet, so he just stood as close as he could at short leg before anyone said, shouldn't you have a helmet? Short covers and silly mid-ons and 1 slip and 2 slip and leg slip. He tried lots of different things, but they did clearly believe in the in-out field, and it got them to that 5 wicket period as much as anything. Maybe they were 15 runs slow on bringing the fielders in, but when they brought the fielders in, there were more boundaries, right? And I think they had a long off out for Hartley and a long off in, or mid off in, for Bashir, and Shubman Gill just went for Bashir rather than Hartley. Like, it's good batting as well. If you really want to know what the problem was, it wasn't the field, it was the fact that that ball got soft. There's an edge. I want to say Jurel took an edge early on, and after that, I think it was Jurel, and it was short of slip, and that was the first moment where I went, this is going to be really tough for England. It also got tough for India to be able to score runs just because of how slow and how soft that ball was. Not slow, but soft the ball was. But that was the point at which I thought England would struggle to get wickets, and that proved right. Other than the full toss and the wicket first ball for Sarfraz, it really was a lot tougher. And I can't remember. CricViz sent me some stats about this, but there was a clear difference between the way the game was played from overs 1 to 40 and 40 to 80 all the way through this match. There was a clear difference between the first hour of the first session and the second hour of the first session. And there was a clear difference in the top 5 wickets and the bottom 5 wickets. That tells me a couple of things. One, maybe the light roller had more of an impact here than it usually does. I think that when the sun fully came up, that the wicket was usually maybe a little bit faster, and when the ball was hard, we were getting more of those balls rolling along the ground, more of that inconsistent bounce, and the balls pinging off the cracks. But when the ball got soft and when it was overcast, it felt to me that was the best time to be able to bat. And generally, that's why in this match, the bottom 5 wickets scored more than the top 5 wickets. There aren't many cricket games you will ever see where that happens. Kunal says, it feels like India's number 3 since 2021, first Pujara, now Gill, tends to be shit in the first innings but does well in the second innings. Is that a statistical anomaly, or is there a reason for this? I would have to look at Pujara's record. I think with Gill, the fact that he's doing it in first-class cricket would suggest that it's got nothing to do with the kind of wickets they've played on. Also, they've played on different surfaces at different times. So I think it is probably more of a statistical anomaly than any specific reason. In India, though, I was going to say, some of those first innings maybe were a little bit brutal at times. You know, during that period where they were juicing up the pitches like a lot towards that before this series, really. I think all the Indian batters' averages went down, and maybe it was a little bit easier when the pitch slowed down at times later on. Maybe some easier chases as well if the other team had made no runs at all. I think all these things are there. But I would assume, Kunal, off the top of my head, it's a statistical anomaly based on the fact that Shubman Gill has the exact same pattern in first-class cricket. Oh, Vedant has... Vedant, can I just say thank you to Vedant, who did a super chat, forgot, and then said he forgot to add text, where he could have just added it and we would have put it on for him. And instead, he sent a whole nother super chat. So, huge thanks to him, but just letting him know we now have the super chat. And, thank you for your support. More than most people. Where do you draw the line between being positive, daydreaming, and being arrogant? Can you recall any other series where the not real favourites are deemed real favourites? Even in the commentary box, it was like, I don't think anyone ever thought England was favourites for that at all. Certainly not in the commentary box. I think the one moment I thought was most interesting is the second test chase, where any other team playing against India, we wouldn't have even thought that they were a chance of doing that chase. But to be fair, England scored 300 in that chase, right? And certainly had moments where it looked like they were doing quite well. So that was justified. At no other stage did anyone think they were favourites. You have to understand, you have to understand the difference between being a fan and being a professional. So this series I have thoroughly enjoyed. And one of the reasons I have enjoyed this series so much is because it's been swinging wildly between different things. Do you know how many cricket series that before the first ball I have a pretty good idea of what's going to happen, and then that is going to happen for the rest of the game? Series. Might be a 2-test series, a 4-test series, a 5-test series, doesn't matter. You can kind of tell who's the better team, who's not the better team, and which direction that's going to go. England bring about an unpredictability that cricket media absolutely loves. It works for headlines, it works for attention, it works for when they succeed, it works for when they fail. No one ever thought that England were the favourites in this series. England didn't think they were the favourites. We talked about this yesterday. And a couple of times, maybe in the last test. England thought, some of the England players and some of the England camp thought that this was lunacy. And they still thought this was their best chance. But they thought, of course they're going to get smashed in the face. India's so much better than them. It's all going to come about. And then they win the first test, and they're like, oh my God. So let's have a look. You talk about the line between being positive. They gave themselves a chance to win the first test, the second test. They were probably never quite in the third test, but, that was the only one. And they gave themselves a chance to win the fourth test. This is a team who, not that long ago, could not win a test match. Before Basball, they lost to the West Indies, right? And you're talking about positive daydreaming or being arrogant. As I said, they weren't being arrogant because they actually probably weren't. I don't think they fully believed this would work over here. Then it did in the first test, and then they became positive, and maybe with a bit of daydreaming, right? Just because you can't help yourself at that point, you're like, what if we do in this series? So I think that is a huge part of it. But it's different, and it's exciting. I've covered Test cricket since 2008. This is the best team I've ever covered, England, right? And if you had told me that in 2015 that if you'd have told me in 2015 that England was going to be the most interesting team in 2024 and they were going to win a couple of World Cups in white ball cricket and they were going to revolutionise Test cricket, I would have punched you in the face. Even if you'd give me 2 super chats for that. So you've got to understand how much this has revolutionised the people who are covering it, fans on both sides, people who love Test cricket. It's incredible. But they are still a flawed team. None of that takes away from the fact that they wouldn't have had to do any of this if they were better. Hemant says, 2 games now where India came back from behind. Could there be something Rohit Dravid do to fire up the team between days? Can't be a random coincidence. I think that I would love to think that that is the case. All I would say is India is a better team than England. And if you follow the history of Test cricket, you will see that over, especially, longer Test matches and longer series, the better team usually comes out on top, right? So I understand why you would say that and your general thoughts behind it, and maybe it's possible. But why didn't we see it in the World Cup when they got behind in the game against Australia, right? What about other games where they've lost when these two have been involved and they haven't come back? So I think it's a little bit cherry picking. I think India is better. What I would say is I think the younger players have stepped up in a way. If Jurel and Jaiswal, I'll call Kuldeep younger, more from an experience point of view. Although he's quite, he's been around for a long time. But if those players all hadn't stood up, they would have lost. I think that is the thing that Rohit and Dravid should be getting praise for. The fact that the next cab off the rank was ready. They had the players, they overcome the sort of randomness of Basball early on. That's the thing I think is, I was going to say more special. I don't mean more special. What do I mean? I think that's the thing that is, they deserve more credit for. The other one, I don't know, it's, guessing at a certain point. Rakesh or Mukesh, I almost said Mukesh. Rakesh or Muku, if one of you is listening, someone called Rek has put a super chat in, but they haven't put the text of it in. Can someone find it? R-E-K? Akshat says, which new player do you think deserves to be selected in the Indian squad for the upcoming series? Oh God, who are they playing next? We haven't even finished this series, Akshat. Which Indian player do I want to see? Prashant Krishna's already played before, but I do want to see more of him in Test cricket. Who's the all-rounder that played against England A? I want to say another left-arm finger spinner. I mean, they may not need him, but I'm interested in what he's done. There's another young batter that I've got on my radar. I can't remember any names. I was not expecting this question. But those are the 3 players I wouldn't mind seeing a little bit more of. I think that's probably fair. Oh, here's Rick. Rick says, have you ever worked with P-Dog, Prasanna? If you can't put a face to the name, he looks like a handsome frog. Is this your alt, Prasanna? I suppose you wouldn't call yourself a handsome frog if it was yourself. I know, we've only ever met once, and I was covering the England-South Africa Test series, and I sort of looking in front of me in the queue, and I think the South African team must have been on the same plane, and I just went up to her and I said, are you Prasanna? And we had a quick chat. And I'm not even sure if we exchanged phone numbers. I know we follow each other on Twitter, and I should have got him on a podcast by now, but I haven't. But yeah, I think we had like a 20-minute, I say 20, it's literally, when you're waiting to give your ticket to the flight attendant to get onto the jet bridge, that was the entire relationship that we've had, other than tweets to each other, and maybe some direct messages I can't even remember. And that's it. But obviously a really talented person, and would love to talk cricket to him one day, and one day I'll remember. It's like the 10th time that I've said that, and I always forget. Stuart says, could a dedicated third umpire be given control of the camera angles he sees and rock and roll himself? Might speed things up. I don't think it would speed things up, Stuart, because I think if we let the umpires do it themselves, it would be much slower. So if you look at the NBA, I think football, some of the football codes, NFL and soccer both do this as well. I think the idea is, certainly the way that I would want it implemented, and I think Adam Collins is someone who's talked about this a lot as well. I think there might be some people on TV who've mentioned it occasionally too, is we want it to be, I don't know, let's say 10 or 15 people who are dedicated third umpires. That's their job. with a crew that they regularly work the games with, so that they have the technicians. The technicians have access to all the stuff that the TV has at all times. So all the different angles, and then they're working together. So you're actually working with a team who is doing it full time. I do think it would be a little bit quicker, only because that would be your entire thing to get that right. Whereas at the moment, it's not quite, it's part of the TV coverage, right? And it's an important part, but it's not quite the same. So I do think it would be a little bit quicker. I also think umpires would learn what to ask for much quicker. And maybe you could. There might be some umpires that could do that. I'm trying to think of, is it the NBA refs and the football and the soccer refs that go over and they look at the screen and they sometimes touch and move things? But we've also seen a lot of, former players struggle with the teleprompters, telestrators and all the technology and everything else. But I think if you have, a team of 3 or 4 experts that work with you consistently, I truly believe that is the way forward. Don't even need to be in the ground. Some of these things are done remotely. There's all sorts of different ways, but I certainly believe that is the way forward. And then you build teams. I don't know enough about the people that you would need to hire, but let's say you need to hire 2 people and the third umpire, and they work as a pod together, and they get promoted and relegated in the same way that everyone else does, and then you switch teams for certain reasons or everything else. Rakesh, there is also someone called Noah has put in a super chat but hasn't put in any text. You've already got you're ahead of me, Rakesh. Saurabh says India versus England 2018, or this one. So India versus England 2018 is probably one of the few England Test series in my career since 2008 that I actually covered as more of a fan, because I was in the Caribbean with St. Lucia for a good part of that, and I don't think I did any writing on that series. I don't think, unless I wrote an article early on. But my memory is that clashed with the CPL, so I was off working with St. Lucia as their analyst. So I watched that as a fan. So I have a very different, recollection of this particular one, right? Where I'm right up in it and commentate. When you're commentating and you're doing all this stuff for you guys and the writing over on goodareas.co. Visit goodareas.co now. Subscribe. When you are doing things this way, it's very different. But yeah, I think I know what you mean. It's like, we kind of felt in that series, India played heaps of really good cricket, but maybe we weren't quite as good as England, and because of that, never quite got over the line. And it felt like a closer series. And this one might feel like that, eventually as well. So I definitely get the vibes that you're going for there. Sorry, and thank you very much for the super chat. Noah, with another super chat, says, your thoughts on day 3. England 8 down, Rohit trying to get Bashir out with Jadu and KD. But then Ash comes and bowling it over decided to attack Folks instead and got him 5D chess. I said this yesterday, actually, Nora, that I think a lot of people are 5D chessing that one. I think really what happens is, there's a great story from years ago when we started to get these incredible camera angles and high speed lenses and all this sort of stuff. And so there's this incredible moment where we then start looking for things that aren't there. So when I started doing the wobble ball stuff, I had a senior bowler kind of take me aside and was like, Jared, I see what you're doing here, and you'll do some good work. But just remember that most seam bowlers run in with the seam pretty much straight up and just try and hit the top of off or just outside off, right? That's literally the 2 things they do. They've got their natural length that, they might attack the stumps or they might attack just outside the stumps, whatever that may be. Don't overcomplicate it. And he's right. And when Sky first got all their cool cameras and they did stuff, there's a whole thing that Nasser Hussain did about how Graham Swan had bowled a purposeful ball that was like an undercutter that had gone on straight, and that's why whichever the batter was hadn't picked it. And all the England boys were watching. The TV happened to be on the screen, and someone asked Swanee, and he's like, no, I was trying to spin it. It just didn't spin. And it might have been that he accidentally undercut under it, right? Because he didn't end up bowling that delivery a lot. But it also might have been, as a couple of bowlers have told me, they don't have a wobble ball. They have a ball that occasionally does what the wobble ball does, and they don't know how to stop. They don't know what to do with it, so they just leave it. This particular one, I think they were trying to get him out caught mid-wicket. They were trying to get him playing that flick shot again. He goes out quite a bit. So they were trying to bowl full and around leg. And he bowled some off spinners. I think he thought, I'll bowl a carom ball because if he still plays that ball, he might spoon it up a little bit more because it'll be spinning away rather than spinning in. What actually happens is that ball lands on, I think, because my memory of it is that it was a little bit fuller and maybe hit a slightly dustier part of the wicket, and it just spins more. There's no way that Ashwin would have pitched a ball that full on leg stump if he knew the carom ball was going to spin that much. Because if that's the ball you knew you were bowling, you would bowl that probably pitching on middle stump, slightly back of a length to try and hit the top of off stump or get an outside edge. So no, I don't think in that particular case that was the overall plan. But we've talked about this a lot. I do think teams sometimes forget to attack the other batter at the other end. And in that case, Folkes wasn't going anywhere. So maybe India just had a discussion, went, let's just bring the field in. If he wants to hit over the top, let him do it. And, there were times today where I thought the same with England. And certainly I felt the same with India yesterday, where I was just like I get it. You guys believe that players can now clear the boundary and clear mid-off and mid-on really, really easily. But in tight situations, don't you still want to make them try and do that once? And I do think it's where modern teams go a little bit wrong with that sort of stuff. Aditya says, can you invite Ashwin on your channel sometimes? It would be fun watching you. So Prasanna and Ashwin, don't they have a show together? If he agrees, please keep a Q&A section. I think if I did a Q&A section with Ashwin, we would break the internet, right? So I'm not sure I can do that, Aditya. Also, I probably have 10,000 questions I want to ask him. I think what I would really... I will, and I haven't asked. He's just busy, right? And it's something that I would definitely ask in the future, maybe after the IPL. If he's not going to be involved in the World T20 team, I don't know if he is or not. But if he's not going to be involved in that World T20 team, after that World Cup or around that World Cup, I might ask him. But I mean, it's quite clear I would love to have him on. And then he would quite clearly tell me that he meant that carom ball to spin that much and pitch in that area, because that is what bowlers do when you ask them those questions. Sometimes they lie. Sorry, I should say sometimes they tell the truth and they go, yeah, it just happened. Repeal sectarian laws, that's a handle. Have the English media comms been guilty of hyping Basball too much? England being in India's head and not really letting the public judge. England won a test match, which was maybe the biggest comeback that we had ever seen, or certainly one of the biggest comebacks, in the top 10 or 15 biggest comebacks we've ever seen in test cricket, by completely getting in India's head. In the next test match, they were chasing 400, which in India should be absolutely impossible, and there were times at which we thought they were going to be there. And in the following test match, they were, 270 runs behind, and Ashwin said it was 50-50. What are we hyping? Do you know what I mean? Like, at a certain point, none of these things I just said then are normal things, right? England were behind 5 wickets down in the first innings. They should have been, in the first test, they should have been smashed, right? The second test match, they should have been bowled out for 120 and been an emotional wreck on the side of the ground. And the third test match, Ben Duckett made everyone feel like the India's first innings total was not enough. So no, I don't think so. I think what everyone is... The problem is that this is the first time that a lot of Indian fans are dealing with Basball directly, right? They are forgetting how shit England were in the period before Basball. They're also forgetting that this is already having ramifications on other teams and how they think and how they plan. Right, so India in this test series a couple of times used some of the Basball theories when it comes to field placements, right? And also, Rohit Sharma is coming down the wicket and flicking pace bowlers over mid-wicket, right, for 6. That is something that we saw that Basball really got right early on. So we are seeing right in front of us it impacting stuff. We're seeing Ollie Pope, who cannot play spin, score an incredible innings by just basically distracting everyone. Right? So we are already seeing these sorts of things happen in front of us. If England had turned up on the back of losing to the West Indies and not done Basball, they would have lost this series 6-0. I'd like to say I'm overhyping that, but I really don't think I am. I think I'm about to go and have to do my other job. Oh, no. I'm going to take a quick break. Oh, I don't know what these men are doing out here. I think they're going to have... I'm going to take a quick break. And there's another super chat from Keshav here, Rakesh, you'll have to find. But I'll take a quick break here. And then I'll go through it and see if there's anything else in the room. And I will be done. But I am Jared Kimber. And this is... what do we call this show? We'll call it Scoreboard. I will remain Jared Kimber for a little while yet to come. We'll have a break. And then I will come back in a little while. Remember that cricket is a funny game. 100 years before we protected our heads, players looked after their groin. So don't be as stupid as old cricketers. Protect your computer. NordVPN is the protection I use when facing cyber short balls or when the rights issue tried to dismiss me. NordVPN will help you get through the straight bat of any GEO blocks so you can watch all the cricket you want. If you need your pitch changed, well, NordVPN can doctor any surface to a new location so your IP address is set up for you to win. Want to buy an associate cricket shirt from a place that won't ship to your country? Select NordVPN. Want to watch a game on a free stream in another hemisphere? Give NordVPN the ball. Or if you just want to watch a clip on social media that the cricket board won't allow, promote NordVPN to pinch it. So if you need a VPN, go Nord. Use nordvpn.com/Kimber to get a huge discount off your NordVPN plan plus 4 additional months for free. It's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the show notes. Protect your computer like a cricketer protects their nether region with NordVPN today. All right, welcome back. Where are we? Who have we got left? I've done Ashwin, haven't I? We'll get to Keshav in a little while. Aditya says, how are England overperforming with their bowling? I think early on in the series specifically, India probably fell into that a little bit. I think going up against a captain like Stokes, there aren't really that many captains like Stokes. And, you know, the sorts of stuff that he does is a little bit trickier, I think, for a lot of players. You know, the field is constantly changing. But generally, when you go up against a captain who's constantly changing the fielding, they're following the ball, is actually what you want as a batter. So I think that's part of it. But I also think England have got very good plans for, you know, different players. Jaiswal, it's really clear to me that Jaiswal and Jarrell have no idea what to do. Whereas with everyone else, they've got fairly clear plans. And their bowlers do take wicket-taking balls. The issue for England is that they, you know, let the pressure off too much. But the actual best balls are there. Also, some of it could be luck, right? And some of it could be India sucked in to the kind of Basball hype and moment and everything themselves. Actually, just before I say this, one thing I would say about England in this Basball era is they have been fantastic at manufacturing wickets. And I think they've continued that in this series. Even though it hasn't worked as well for them in other series, they're still manufacturing wickets when I'm like, this team should be, you know, 400 for 3. Chaitanya says, should Folkes and Bairstow swap their batting positions? No. I think I understand why, because other people have asked the same about Stokes and Folkes at times as well. I actually think you want Folkes in later when the ball is soft on Indian wickets, because he does play with softer hands and everything else, and he has that sort of Jadeja talent, talent level of, you know, just being able to be patient, wait for the ball, get for it soft, play it under your eyes and everything else. Whereas actually you probably want the guys who hit the ball to face it when it's harder and it's coming onto the bat. Ram says, England media can't accept a fair and square defeat. Pretty sure England can accept it. I don't know. I'm not English media, so I can't really answer for them. And again, they're searching for reasons for another moral victory. That's why so much buzz around Hawkeye. I think the Hawkeye stuff was mostly the England team, not the media, right? I mean, Ali Martin put a tweet up yesterday about the Joe Root dismissal, where and he's England media, he's the Guardian, you know, can't get more England media than him. And he basically said it's fine. We said it was fine on TalkSport. Harmy's been questioning Hawkeye in general, but more, if you go back to the show yesterday, Ram, you'll be able to see what we're talking about, which is more the randomness. It just feels like it's a bit more random than it used to be. But even within that, Harmy is willing to say that that's in both directions. I can only speak for Talksport. I don't know what they've been saying on TNT or in the papers all together. But what was the other thing? Oh, I've now forgotten what it was. The umpire's call. Bumble straight away said that's nonsense. Here's why umpire's call exists. I think myself, Harmy, and Jude's all had that conversation during this test as well. So it might be that you're looking at Michael Vaughan's comments, and as I said before, I don't know what they are. England losing 3-1 is a moral victory here, and we've seen that before. We've seen Australia. I think Australia probably had a bit of a moral victory when they came out to India last time. Someone mentioned the 2018 series. That was another one, perhaps, where you could throw that up as well. So, yeah, I don't know. It's funny because I get comments from both sides, and I've had plenty of moaning from Indian fans all the way through about multiple things. So for me, I'm not seeing it in the same way that others are, but also I don't really care that much what other media say. I'm trying to look and work out what the truth of the issue is, not what an opinion piece or what an ex-player said on Twitter. Keshav says, would England 2012 have done better than England 2024 in this series on these pitches against a depleted India? Ooh. The spinners certainly would have been a help, right? Probably a better batting lineup too. I mean, that was a world number one team. This is not a world number one team, right? I think nothing in this series has convinced me that Australia and India aren't still better than England. All right, England didn't win the Ashes at home. They've been really, really good at times here, but India still looks better. And if India was full strength, I don't know, England's not quite full strength either, but the players that India are missing probably mattered more at times. I still think India is much better. I was disappointed when India came back and played so poorly in that 5th test at Edgbaston last year, because I actually think they have a very interesting, because they have people like Ashwin and Rohit and Virat and Bumrah, so much cricket knowledge. I thought that they might be the ones to kind of work out Basball first, whereas perhaps it was New Zealand and then Australia that worked it out. Anyway, yes, I think that was a better England side. It would have done well. Wouldn't have played this style though. Shrek? Pete. I'll just say Pete. Pete's easier. When did it become acceptable for ball-by-ball commentators to use we when referring to one side during his commentary? I reckon over the past 8 to 10 years it has happened a lot more. Some commentaries are specifically more aimed at a certain market, and I think radio commentaries are ones that it's very rare for that. But I reckon that might change now that so many radio commentaries are streamed and can be accessed with VPNs and things. And different commentators probably do it differently. Like if you look, well, I wasn't commentating on this one, but if it sometimes me, Neil Manthorpe, and then an English commentator do a Talksport one, then maybe one commentator does feel like he is the English voice, whereas even though Man is part English, doesn't, is a South African voice, obviously, accent-wise, and I'm an Australian. So sometimes you might get situations like that. But yeah, it's not the way I broadcast, but it's also not the way I think. So I'm probably not the right person to ask for this because I, don't necessarily agree with this. Neuro says, Super Chat follow-up, please take it. No. I meant just decided to attack folks was Ashwin's idea as he looked up from his chat with Rohit in that over. Rohit was quite content on attacking only Bashir. Yes, but I think at that stage they might have actually had a conversation where it's like, let's have a go. So you're projecting the conversation a little bit, partly because we think of Ashwin as a genius, but it could just be that they hadn't attacked folks for a while. The game wasn't getting away from him, and Rohit's like, why don't we just bring the field up and see what he does, and why don't we try something slightly different? We're guessing, right? And I'll tell you the truth, in these situations, it's rare that you ever get the full truth. Because Ashwin will remember it different than Rohit will anyway. And there'll be someone else who has a separate view on it. It's just a moment that happened. I still think the main reason that wicket happened was the extra spin rather than anything else. Vinad's another one. Vinad's just coming in off the long run. I feel like, taking all of his pocket money now. First we were exposed to Basball. My biggest fear about us managements looking over future talents moulded similar to Pujara Dravid, grind not being part of Test cricket in the near future. I think you have different kinds of grind. We just saw one of the major reasons that Australia retained the Ashes, was Usman Khawaja, right? And England played on his grind. They knew the way he was going to play, and so they went for it. And I think that what modern cricket is really allowing for is that ability to gear up and gear down. So think of Jaiswal. Jaiswal's a really good example. Was it the first innings here? Or was it the second innings in the last test where he was 8 of 48 balls? And then after a while, he starts to, really attack and counter-attack. So we see him bat like a test player. Then we see him bat like a T20 player. Then we see him accumulate like an ODI player. Players have all those gears available to them, right? So if you go back to Bradman didn't have the T20 gear. We know that in club cricket, he would occasionally put it out, but it's not a thing he did against the best bowlers in the world all that often because it wasn't expected of him and it generally wasn't needed, right? We then had that whole period where there were so many players who were like white ball dependent, but they weren't very good in red ball situations. Part of it was they didn't know how to use the white ball skills in red ball cricket. There's such an overlap now. I think Jaiswal's a perfect example of it. I can't remember which show, but we did talk about it before. For me, it's his ability to go to any three gears that makes him a next tier level player. He's got the eye, he's got the hunger, he's got the technique. Who knows how he's going to go, over a long period. He'll have fellow things. How will he deal with his first big failures? All those sorts of things can affect him. But those first three things that I mentioned before are really, really handy. But his ability to go, this is a tough wicket. I'm not going to hit any boundaries. So early in the series, he basically wasn't scoring against Anderson. Later in the series, he's like, actually, what I need to do is, at certain periods, I need to not score against Anderson. And at certain other periods, I need to smack this shit out of Anderson, right? That is a skill that so many test players before would have loved to have had available to them. Oh, it's not working. Well, I'm going to run down the wicket and hit Anderson back over his head, right? How many players were just stuck against Fred Truman and Ray Linwell and, these Kapil Dev and Richard Hadley, these guys who just go like, I'm going to hit the top of off stump for the next 3 hours and you're going to just have to handle it, right? And now modern players are like, no, I don't have to handle it. I'm going to take 3 steps down the wicket. I'm going to whack you back over your head. How are you going to handle that? So Test cricket has changed, but it is evolving. But if you go through the entire history of it, if it hadn't evolved, you wouldn't love it. So this is the thing that people forget. People look back on their golden eras of like, well, music is always better, between the age of 14 and 24, and movies are always better between the age of 14 and 24, because that's the era that you fell in love with movies, right? But that's not true, because a lot of people grew up in the 80s, and movies were shit in the 80s quite a lot of times, right? And the truth is that Test cricket is the way it is now because of all the different players who have evolved it. Right, so I think the reverse sweep makes it a better sport. I think reverse swing makes it a better sport. I think the wrong-un. So when the wrong-un first came about, this is the best story ever. I've told it so many times, but I'll tell it again because it's fun. When the wrong-un first came about, what people actually said was not, this is fantastic. We can't believe this new ball. Look, they don't know which way it's going. How exciting. They actually said the wrong-un is ruining cricket. No one can play it. It should be banned. There's a story that I always tell, which is probably apocryphal, but I love it anyway, of the first time someone played a forward defence. And apparently, and this is in Hambledon, someone shouted out, that's just not cricket. We've been doing this forever. The game changes and it evolves and it moves. All Things Cinema just sent through a message to Rakesh, if you get a chance to do it. But I think that's it, other than the last one, unless any more super chats come through. Somehow we got through an hour. I'm supposed to be recording with Harmy. He seems to be recording something else at the moment. And Neil Manthorpe, I think I was working with, and he seems to be not coming to bug me. But I better finish. I've got to do a piece for the main video, if you haven't seen it. I didn't. This Naman message just came up magically here. But there's one from All Things Cinema as well, Rakesh, if you can find it before we go. Does DRS adjust for difference of radius between SG and Kookaburra balls? Radius? Aren't they the same? Aren't all cricket balls the exact same size? Am I wrong? Not all cricket balls are the exact same size. So your bigger point would be when a ball gets wet, when a ball gets soft, it changes shape. And I would assume Hawkeye can't deal with that because they'd have to go out and have a look at the ball. But what Hawkeye is really dealing with is the trajectory, right, of what happens and trying to map it out. And I don't know how much of it, a part of that is the radius, but That, to be honest, I've never heard that before. But cricket balls changed. Like 2 balls by SG won't be the exact same size, right? That's the same all the way through. I would assume that Kookaburra balls would be the basis for all this, but I'm only guessing. Super Chat Q from All Things Cinema, and then we're done. And thank you to everyone. Huge support on this one. I only got a couple that weren't Super Chat, so big thanks to everyone on this one. How about this World 11 to win a Test series in India? Smith, Khawaja, Williamson, Root, Stokes, Rizwan, Maharaj, Cummins, Rabada, Stark, Lyon. Full strength India versus this. Okay, so man for man, I would still rather have India's opening batters. Williamson averages 33 in India. Root, I like it for. Stokes, is he going to make enough runs? Rizwan is a very good call. I like that. Whether it be Smith, Khawaja, or Karunaratne, I think he would still struggle. Cummins, Rabada, fantastic, and I think give you lots of options there. Stark. Oh, wait a minute. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Well, it'll be bowled out. You got Maharaj batting at 7 and Cummins batting at 8. I know you have Stark in there, so you have a little bit more batting, but I'd still pick India, I think, over this team in India. Not this Indian team, but yeah, full strength Indian team, fully fit and ready and raring to go. I think I'd still pick India, although this would be close. But I don't think I'd have Stokes. Who would I have at 5? Oh, you're going to blow the top of my head. Would you have Darryl Mitchell at 5? Don't know. Has he played in India? Would you have Devon Conway, perhaps, as well? Did he make runs in India? I can't remember. Everything's a blur. I've been recording for 4 days straight on all sorts of things. I have many more recordings left to go. Later tonight, we'll be having a bunch of podcasts. Come over for those podcasts as well. I'm Jared Kimber. This is the Scoreboard. Remember, we do this every day of the test. We'll be doing it for the World Cup as well. We might do it for the IPL. You don't know. You don't know where I'm going to turn up and why I'm going to turn up and how all these things happen because I don't know. That's part of it. I am the Basball of cricket YouTube. I don't know. I'm not sure I really even would say that's correct, but I'm something. I'm definitely something.
Ever wondered why slower deliveries work, what a zombie ball is, or how Sunil Gavaskar would have batted in T20? Well, we have the channel for you, Good Areas. Twice a week, we have a new deep dive into a great story from cricket on our main channel, Good Areas. It is the history and present of cricket as narrated by me. If you make any content, Memento is the tool for you. Take your long format pods and meetings and anything you have and let Memento cut and slice it up for social media. This AI-inspired weapon will turn your one piece of work into so many